Jake Morrison stared at the glowing screen in front of him. The numbers dancing across the display made no sense. In 3 years of deep space exploration, he had never seen readings like these. "Computer, run the scan again," he said, pushing his brown hair back from his forehead. The coffee in his cup had gone cold hours ago, but he barely noticed. The ship hummed quietly around him. Most of the crew of the Aurora's Dream were asleep. Only Jake and the night shift were awake, floating through the dark space between stars. They were 3 months into their mission to map new worlds beyond the edge of human space. The computer beeped. Scan complete. Unknown energy signature confirmed. Distance 47,000 kilometers. Jake sat up straight. Something was out there. Something that wasn't supposed to exist in this empty corner of space. He pressed the comm button. "Captain Hayes to the bridge, please. We have a situation." Within minutes, Captain Ryan Hayes arrived, still buttoning his uniform jacket. His gray eyes were alert despite being woken from sleep. "What do you have, Jake?" "Look at this." Jake pointed to the screen. "There's something out there. The energy readings don't match anything in our database." Captain Hayes studied the display. "Could be a natural phenomenon. Space is full of surprises." "That's what I thought too. But watch this." Jake typed commands into his console. The screen changed, showing a 3-dimensional image of the object. "It's not natural, Captain. It's artificial." The image showed a small, damaged craft tumbling slowly through space. Strange symbols covered its hull and one side was badly burned. "An escape pod," Captain Hayes said quietly. "But not human." Jake nodded. "First contact protocols require us to investigate any signs of alien life." "I know the rules." The captain was quiet for a moment, thinking. "Wake up Dr. Carter and Chief Murphy, and get Navigator Walsh to the bridge. If we're going to do this, we do it right." An hour later, the Aurora's Dream moved slowly toward the alien craft. The ship's medical bay was ready, and Jake had put on his environmental suit. As the team's expert in alien life, he would be the first to board the unknown vessel. "Life signs detected," Dr. Lisa Carter announced from her station. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a professional bun, and her blue eyes showed excitement mixed with worry. "2 beings, both alive but weak. Radiation levels?" Captain Hayes asked. "High but not deadly. Jake's suit will protect him." The airlock connected to the alien pod with a soft thud. Jake checked his equipment one more time, then stepped through the opening. The inside of the pod was dark and cold. Emergency lights cast red shadows on strange walls. The air smelled of burned metal and something else, something organic and sweet. Jake moved carefully through the small space. His helmet light revealed alien writing on the walls and control panels that made no sense to human eyes. But it was clearly technology, clearly intelligent design. Then he saw them. 2 small figures lay on what looked like sleeping platforms. They were clearly not human, but they looked so much like children that Jake's heart nearly stopped. They had pale blue skin that seemed to glow faintly in the dark. Their heads were larger than human children, with enormous eyes that were closed in unconsciousness. They wore simple clothes that looked like they had once been white but were now stained and torn. "My God," Jake whispered. "They're just kids." The larger one looked to be about 10 years old in human terms. The smaller one couldn't be more than 8. Both were breathing, but their breath came in short, difficult gasps. "Jake, report." Captain Hayes' voice crackled through the comm. "2 children, Captain. Alien, but definitely children. They're alive, but in bad shape. I'm bringing them aboard now." Jake carefully lifted the first child. Despite the alien features, the weight and feel were heartbreakingly familiar. This was a child regardless of species, a child who needed help. The second child was lighter, smaller. As Jake picked this one up, large eyes fluttered open. They were purple, deep and luminous like stars. The child looked at Jake through his helmet faceplate. For a moment, neither moved. Then the child's mouth opened and a sound came out. It wasn't words Jake could understand, but the meaning was clear. The child was afraid. "It's okay," Jake said softly, knowing the child couldn't understand his words but hoping his tone would help. "You're safe now. I'm going to help you." The purple eyes studied Jake's face. Something seemed to change in the child's expression. The fear didn't go away, but it lessened. The child made another sound, softer this time. Jake carried both children to the Aurora's Dream. Dr. Carter was waiting in the medical bay with equipment ready. She began her examination immediately while Jake stood nearby, still in his environmental suit. "Radiation poisoning," Dr. Carter said after several minutes. Not fatal, but serious. They're also suffering from dehydration and malnutrition. They've been in that pod for weeks, maybe longer. Will they be okay? Jake asked. I think so. Their biology is similar enough to human that I can treat them. But Jake, she looked up at him with concern. They're terrified. Whatever happened to them, it was bad. As if responding to her words, the smaller child began to make distressed sounds. The larger one was still unconscious but started moving restlessly. Without thinking, Jake moved to the bed where the smaller child lay. He pulled off his helmet and gloves so the child could see his face clearly. Hey there, he said gently. It's going to be okay. The child's purple eyes focused on Jake's face. The distressed sound stopped. Slowly, a small blue hand reached out toward Jake. Jake extended his own hand carefully. The child's fingers touched his palm, and suddenly Jake felt something strange. Not quite a voice in his head, but something like emotions that weren't his own. Fear, loneliness, and something else. Hope. Incredible, Dr. Carter whispered. Look at the brain scans. They're telepathic. The child's lips moved, forming sounds that the ship's computer began to analyze. After a moment, the translation came through the speakers. Father? Protector. Jake felt his breath catch. I'm not your father, little one. But I'll protect you. I promise. The child seemed to understand something in Jake's tone, even if not his words. The small hand gripped Jake's finger with surprising strength. Captain Hayes entered the medical bay. How are they? Stable, Dr. Carter replied. But Captain, we have a bigger problem. Long-range sensors are picking up ships heading this way. Multiple contacts, and they're not human. Jake looked down at the child, still holding his finger. Those purple eyes looked back at him with complete trust. Whatever was coming, whatever these children were running from, Jake knew one thing for certain. He would protect them. The alarm echoed through the ship like a scream. Jake felt the smaller child's grip tighten on his finger as fear flooded through their telepathic connection. 6 ships approaching fast, Navigator Amy Walsh announced over the comm system. Unknown design, but they're armed and they're not slowing down. Captain Hayes moved to the nearest comm panel. All hands to battle stations. This is not a drill. Jake looked down at the 2 children. The smaller one was awake now, those purple eyes wide with terror. The larger child had also awakened, revealing eyes the same luminous purple. This one looked older, perhaps 10 in human years, with the same pale blue skin and delicate features. Dr. Carter, how quickly can you move them? Jake asked. They're stable enough to transfer to the safe room, she replied, already preparing a mobile medical unit. But Jake, they're scared. Their stress levels are through the roof. The larger child sat up slowly, looking around the medical bay with confusion. When those purple eyes found Jake's face, something seemed to click. The child made soft sounds and the computer translated, the hunters. They found us. Hunters? Jake knelt beside the bed. Who are the hunters? Before the child could answer, Captain Hayes' voice filled the room. Attention, unknown vessels. This is Captain Ryan Hayes of the human exploration ship Aurora's Dream. State your intentions. The response came immediately, in perfect English that somehow sounded wrong, like a machine trying to copy human speech. Human vessel, you carry stolen property of the hegemony. Surrender the Etherian specimens immediately and you will not be harmed. Jake felt both children tremble. The word specimens made his stomach turn. Captain, he said into his comm. They're calling the children specimens. These aren't prisoners of war. These are refugees. Human vessel, the alien voice continued. You have 30 seconds to comply. Failure to surrender the specimens will result in your destruction. Captain Hayes' response was immediate and firm. Negative, alien vessel. These children are under the protection of the human government. We will not surrender refugees to hostile forces. Jake felt a surge of pride in his captain, in his crew, in humanity itself. They were vastly outgunned, but they would not abandon children to whatever these hunters represented. The larger child grabbed Jake's arm, and suddenly his mind was filled with images. Not words, but pictures and emotions flowing from the child's memory into his own. He saw a beautiful world with silver cities and crystal towers. He saw beings like these children, but adults living in peace. Then came the darkness, ships falling from the sky like metal rain, cities burning, families running, screaming, trying to escape. He saw these 2 children being pushed into an escape pod by an adult who looked like them, but taller, more elegant. A woman, Jake realized. Their mother. She was crying as she sealed them inside, knowing she might never see them again. "The hegemony destroyed your world," Jake whispered, understanding flooding through him. Both children nodded, tears flowing down their blue faces. "We are the last," the older child's thoughts formed in Jake's mind. "Mama said to find the kind ones, the ones who protect instead of take." "Your mother was right," Jake said, gently taking both children's hands. "We protect, always." The ship shuddered as the first enemy weapons struck their shields. "All crew to emergency stations," Captain Hayes announced. "We are under attack." Dr. Carter quickly moved the children to mobile stretchers. "Jake, help me get them to the safe room." They moved through corridors filled with running crew members. Chief Engineer Ben Murphy was shouting orders about power distribution. Security teams were preparing for possible boarding. Everyone was scared, but everyone was doing their job. The safe room was deep in the ship's center, surrounded by the heaviest armor. Jake helped Dr. Carter settle the children on comfortable beds while the ship shook around them. "Don't leave us." The smaller child's thoughts pleaded in Jake's mind. "I won't," Jake promised, sitting between their beds. "I'll stay right here." The battle raged for hours. Through the ship's internal comm, Jake could hear the crew's reports. The Aurora's Dream was a science vessel, not a warship, but Chief Murphy had somehow boosted their shields and weapons beyond normal capacity. "Human engineering at its finest." Murphy's voice crackled over the comm as another enemy salvo struck them. "These shields weren't designed for this, but I've convinced them to work anyway." Navigator Walsh was performing miracles, using the nearby asteroid field to break enemy targeting locks. "If you can't outgun them, outdance them," she reported during a brief comm, but Jake could tell they were losing. 6 ships against 1, and the enemy vessels were built for war. The older child sat up on the bed, purple eyes glowing brighter than before. "I can help," the thought came clearly into Jake's mind. "How?" Jake asked. Instead of answering with thoughts, the child began to sing. It was unlike any sound Jake had ever heard, beautiful and haunting. The smaller child joined in, their voices blending in harmony that seemed to vibrate through the ship itself. Suddenly, Jake felt different. Stronger, faster, more alert. Through the comm system, he could hear similar reactions from the crew. "What the hell?" Chief Murphy's voice was filled with amazement. "The ship systems are responding faster. It's like everything just got upgraded." "My reflexes," Navigator Walsh reported with wonder. "I can see the enemy movements before they happen." Dr. Carter was staring at her medical readings in shock. "Their singing is affecting our brain chemistry, improving our reaction times, our cognitive function." "How is this possible?" The older child looked at Jake with ancient wisdom in young eyes. "This is what we do. We help others become more than they were." Mama called it the gift, Jake understood. The Etherian children weren't just refugees. They were members of a species that could accelerate evolution in others. No wonder the hegemony hunted them. If these children could make humans stronger, faster, smarter— "Captain," Jake spoke into his comm, "the children are helping us. Whatever you're feeling, go with it. Trust your instincts." For the next 2 hours, the Aurora's Dream fought like a ship possessed. Captain Hayes made tactical decisions that seemed impossible. Murphy kept the ship running beyond all reasonable limits. Walsh flew patterns that defied physics. But it was Dr. Carter who suggested the winning strategy. "The star," she said over the comm, "we're close enough to hide in the corona. The radiation will mask our signature." "That's suicide," Murphy protested. "Our shields can't handle stellar radiation." "They can now," the older child's thought came to Jake. "We make you stronger." "All of you," Jake relayed the message. There was a moment of silence, then Captain Hayes' voice. "Navigator Walsh, plot a course for the star. All hands, prepare for stellar approach." What happened next would be talked about in human space for generations. The Aurora's Dream dove directly into the outer corona of the system's star. The radiation should have killed them all instantly. Instead, the ship flew through the stellar fire like it was built for it. The enemy ships tried to follow, but their vessels weren't enhanced by Etherian song. One by one, they were forced to retreat as the radiation overwhelmed their systems. When the Aurora's Dream finally emerged from the star's corona, they were alone in space. The enemy was gone. In the safe room, both children collapsed from exhaustion. Jake caught the smaller one as the child fell toward him. "Thank you," Jake whispered. "You saved us all." The older child looked up at him with tired eyes. "You saved us first." You chose to protect instead of run. Mama was right about humans. As Jake held both children, he realized something had changed in him. He felt stronger, more aware. The enhancement they had given the crew wasn't temporary. It was permanent. But more than that, these children trusted him completely. They had called him Protector, and he had proven worthy of that title. Get some rest, he told them gently. You're safe now. Will you stay? The smaller child asked with thoughts colored by hope. I'll stay, Jake promised. I'll always stay. As the children fell asleep in his arms, Jake wondered what other surprises awaited them in the vast darkness of space. But one thing was certain. These children had chosen him and he had chosen them. They were family now, no matter what came next. 3 days after the battle, the Aurora's Dream hid inside an old mining station at the edge of the asteroid field. The station had been abandoned for decades, but Chief Murphy had managed to get the basic life support working again. Jake sat in what used to be the station's cafeteria, watching Kira and Neo eat their breakfast. The children had finally told him their names through the growing telepathic connection they shared. Kira was the older one, and Neo was her little brother. The food tastes different now, Kira said, her thoughts flowing easily into Jake's mind. After 3 days together, communication had become natural between them. Different how? Jake asked, speaking out loud. He was teaching them English while they taught him to understand their telepathic speech. Brighter, more alive. Neo looked up from his bowl with those huge purple eyes. Everything feels more alive since we sang for your ship. Dr. Carter entered the cafeteria, carrying her medical scanner. Daily checkup time, she announced cheerfully. The doctor had become very fond of the children, and they trusted her almost as much as they trusted Jake. As Dr. Carter ran her scans, Jake noticed something strange happening. The readings on her device were getting stronger each day, not just for the children, but for Jake himself. Your brain activity is off the charts, Dr. Carter told Jake quietly while the children played with a puzzle toy navigator Walsh had made for them. Whatever they did to enhance us during the battle, it's still growing stronger. Is that dangerous? Jake asked. I don't think so. But Jake, you're changing. Your reflexes are 3 times faster than normal human levels. Your brain is processing information at incredible speeds. And your connection with the children... She paused, looking concerned. It's not just telepathy anymore. You're starting to share biological patterns with them. Before Jake could ask what that meant, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Captain Hayes's voice echoed over the old comm system. All hands prepare for immediate departure. We have multiple ships approaching and they're not friendly. Jake felt both children freeze with terror. Through their connection, he sensed familiar fear. The hunters had found them again. How many ships? Jake asked into his comm as he gathered the children. 12 this time. Navigator Walsh replied grimly. The hegemony is serious about getting these kids back. As the crew rushed to prepare the Aurora's Dream for departure, Kira grabbed Jake's hand. Her touch sent a flood of images into his mind, but these were different from before. These were memories from before her world died. Jake saw Etherian adults working with other alien species, helping them grow and evolve. He saw planets where primitive beings became advanced civilizations with Etherian guidance. He saw a galaxy where hundreds of species lived in peace, all helped by Etherian gifts. We were teachers, Kira's thoughts explained. Mama said we helped the young ones grow up, like parents help children. But then the hegemony came. More images flowed. Jake saw the true scope of what the hegemony had done. Not just Kira and Neo's world, but dozens of others. Entire species wiped out, their potential destroyed before they could grow. They fear growth, Neo added, his small hand finding Jake's other hand. They only want to rule. But when people grow too much, they become hard to rule. Jake understood. The hegemony wasn't just conquering worlds. They were preventing evolution itself, keeping species weak so they could remain in control. The Etherians made other species too strong, Jake said. So the hegemony decided to eliminate you entirely. Both children nodded sadly. The ship shuddered as it lifted off from the mining station. Through the viewports, Jake could see the approaching hegemony fleet. 12 warships against their single science vessel. This is it, Captain Hayes announced. We can't outrun them this time and we can't hide. If anyone has any brilliant ideas, now would be the time. Jake looked down at the children. They were terrified, but they were also looking at him with complete trust. In their eyes, he saw something that made his heart race. They're not just looking for any Etherians, he realized. They're looking for these specific children. Why? Kira's thoughts came hesitantly. Mama left something with us. Something important. But we can only share it with someone we trust completely. What kind of something? Jake asked. The location of the last sanctuary, Neo answered. The place where the other survivors hide. But if the hegemony finds it, everyone dies, Jake finished. That's why they want you so badly. You're not just refugees. You're the key to finding the last of your people. The ship shook as the first enemy weapons found their range. Jake, Dr. Carter's voice came over the comm. I need you in the medical bay. There's something about the children's biology you need to see. Jake took both children's hands and hurried to the medical bay. Dr. Carter was standing in front of a complex display showing DNA structures. Look at this, she said, pointing to the screen. This is your DNA from 3 days ago. The image showed normal human genetic patterns. And this is your DNA now. The new image was clearly different. Sections of Jake's genetic code had changed, becoming more complex and efficient. The children aren't just enhancing your abilities, Dr. Carter explained. They're actually evolving you. Your body is adapting to work better with theirs. Is that why I can understand their thoughts so clearly now? Jake asked. It's more than that. Your brain is developing new structures, new ways of processing information. In a few more days, you'll be able to access whatever information they're carrying. But Jake, Dr. Carter looked worried. This process might not be reversible. You're becoming something new, something between human and Etherian. Another blast shook the ship. The lights flickered. Shields down to 60%, Chief Murphy's voice reported. We're taking heavy damage. Jake looked at the children. They were holding each other, tears streaming down their blue faces. Through their connection, he could feel their pain, not just fear for themselves, but grief for all the others who would die if the sanctuary was discovered. The information your mother left with you, Jake said gently. If I can access it, can we save the others? Yes, Kira whispered. But you would have to trust us completely. Let us change you completely. I might not be human anymore. You would still be you, Neo said. Just more than you were before. The ship shuddered again. This time sparks flew from damaged panels. Shields down to 30%, Murphy reported. We're not going to last much longer. Jake made his decision. Do it, he told the children. Change me. Save your people. Both children looked at him with surprise. You would do that for us? Kira asked. You're my family now, Jake said simply. I protect my family. The children exchanged glances, then moved closer to Jake. They placed their small hands on his head, and Jake felt the change begin immediately. It was like every cell in his body was waking up. Pain and pleasure mixed together as his DNA rewrote itself. Information flowed into his mind, not just thoughts, but pure knowledge. He saw star charts, navigation codes, quantum signatures. He saw the location of the hidden sanctuary, protected by technology beyond anything the hegemony possessed. But more than that, he saw the truth about what the Etherians really were. They weren't just teachers or helpers. They were guardians of life itself, preserving the potential of every species in the galaxy. And now, somehow, Jake was becoming one of them. The transformation lasted only minutes. But when it was over, Jake knew he was no longer entirely human. He could feel the cosmic background radiation of space, sense the quantum fluctuations that powered faster than light travel. The sanctuary, he said, his voice sounding different even to himself. I know where it is. Can you get us there? Captain Hayes asked over the comm. Jake stood up, feeling strength and awareness he had never possessed before. I can do better than that. I can get us there safely, and I can make sure the hegemony never finds it. Through the ship's sensors, which he could now access directly with his enhanced mind, Jake reached out and touched the enemy vessel's computer systems. This is impossible, Navigator Walsh reported with amazement. The enemy ships are losing power. Their weapons are shutting down. Not shutting down, Jake corrected. I'm talking to their computers, convincing them that attacking us is not in their best interest. One by one, the hegemony ships powered down their weapons and began drifting away from the Aurora's dream. How? Captain Hayes asked. Jake looked down at Kira and Neo, who were smiling up at him with joy and relief. I learned from the best teachers in the galaxy, he said. Now let's go find their family. The coordinates led them to what looked like empty space. Jake stood on the bridge of the Aurora's dream, his enhanced senses reaching out into the void. To normal human eyes, there was nothing here but darkness and distant stars. "Are you sure this is right?" Captain Hayes asked, studying the empty view screen. Jake closed his eyes and let his new abilities expand. Through the quantum connection he now shared with Kira and Neo, he could sense something massive hidden nearby. "It's here," he said quietly. "It's just very well hidden." Kira and Neo stood beside him, their small hands touching his arms. Through their connection, they sent out a complex signal, a pattern of thoughts and emotions that served as a key. Suddenly, space in front of them began to shimmer. The darkness peeled away like an optical illusion, revealing something that made the entire crew gasp in amazement. A moon hung in space before them, but it wasn't natural. The surface was covered in intricate patterns that glowed with soft light. Massive structures rose from the surface, beautiful and clearly artificial. It was like a city built inside a hollow moon. "My God," Dr. Carter whispered. "It's incredible." "The last sanctuary," Jake said, the knowledge flowing from the children's genetic memories, built by the first Etherians thousands of years ago. As the Aurora's dream approached, a gentle beam of light reached out from the sanctuary and guided them to a docking port. The technology was so advanced it seemed like magic, but Jake's enhanced mind could understand the basic principles. "Life support is optimal," Chief Murphy reported with wonder. "They're matching our atmosphere perfectly before we even dock." The airlock connected with a soft musical tone. When the door opened, a figure stood waiting for them. She was clearly Etherian, like Kira and Neo, but adult. Tall and elegant, with the same luminous purple eyes and pale blue skin. Her hair was long and silver, and she wore robes that seemed to be made of captured starlight. But it was her face that made Jake's heart stop. Even transformed as he was, even with his enhanced abilities, he recognized the features. This was the woman from the children's memories. The one who had put them in the escape pod with tears in her eyes. "Mama," Kira and Neo cried out together, running toward her. The woman dropped to her knees and gathered both children in her arms. Tears of joy streamed down her face as she held them close. Through the telepathic connection, Jake felt waves of emotion so powerful they nearly overwhelmed him. Relief, joy, love beyond measure, and something else. Surprise. The woman looked up at Jake with those ancient, wise eyes. When she spoke, her voice was like music. "I am Lyra, guardian of the last sanctuary. And you—" She studied Jake's transformed features with amazement. "You are not what I expected." "Jake Morrison," he said, stepping forward. "I found your children drifting in space. We've been protecting them." Lyra stood gracefully, still holding Kira's and Neo's hands. "I can see that you have done more than protect them. You have bonded with them. You have become—" She paused, searching for words. "Something new." "He's our dad now," Neo said simply. "He chose us and we chose him." Lyra's eyes widened. Bonding with humans was only theoretical. We never thought it would actually work. She looked at Jake with new respect. "You have sacrificed much to save my children." "I gained more than I lost," Jake replied honestly. Captain Hayes and the rest of the crew had followed them through the airlock. Lyra welcomed them warmly, but Jake could sense her urgency. Something was wrong. "How many ships followed you here?" she asked. "None," Captain Hayes replied. "Jake disabled the hegemony fleet. They couldn't track us." "That's what worries me," Lyra said, leading them through corridors filled with impossible beauty. The walls themselves seemed alive, flowing with patterns of light. "The hegemony has been hunting my children for months. They know the location of the sanctuary is hidden in their genetic memory. If they stopped pursuing you," Jake felt his enhanced mind working through the possibilities. "They have another plan, something that doesn't require capturing the children alive." Lyra nodded grimly. "Show me," she said, and suddenly Jake felt her presence in his mind. It wasn't intrusion, but invitation. She was sharing her knowledge with him. Images flowed between them. Jake saw the true scope of the sanctuary. It wasn't just a hiding place. It was a repository of genetic information from hundreds of extinct species, civilizations that the hegemony had destroyed over the centuries. Every race that ever showed potential for growth, Lyra explained. Their genetic patterns, their cultural memories, their evolutionary possibilities, all preserved here. "If the hegemony finds this place," Dr. Carter began, "they can ensure that nothing in this galaxy ever evolves beyond their control again." Jake finished. They'll destroy not just the survivors, but the possibility of rebuilding. Through the sanctuary's vast halls, Jake saw other Etherians. Perhaps 100 in total, all that remained of a species that had once numbered in the billions. They were tending to gardens that grew plants from dead worlds, maintaining libraries that held the dreams of extinct civilizations. This is why they want Kira and Neo specifically, Jake realized, not just because they know the location, but because they carry the genetic keys to access all of this. Lyra led them to a vast chamber at the sanctuary's heart. The walls were covered with flowing patterns of light, each one representing a different species. At the center stood a massive crystal structure that pulsed with gentle energy. The heart of memory, Lyra explained. It contains the evolutionary potential of every species we've ever encountered. With the right genetic key, it can restore entire civilizations. And my children carry those keys, she added, looking at Kira and Neo with mixed pride and sorrow. Suddenly, alarms began sounding throughout the sanctuary. An Etherian Jake hadn't met before rushed into the chamber. Guardian Lyra, the newcomer said urgently, our long-range sensors detect a massive fleet approaching. Over 1,000 ships. Jake felt his blood turn cold. The entire hegemony fleet. They're not trying to capture the sanctuary anymore, Captain Hayes realized. They're going to destroy it completely. Lyra moved to a control panel that responded to her touch. Displays showed the approaching fleet, a dark cloud of warships that filled space. Our defenses are strong, but not against that many ships. How long do we have? Jake asked. 6 hours, perhaps less. Jake looked around the chamber at the beautiful, impossible technology, at the genetic patterns representing hundreds of lost civilizations, at the Etherian survivors who had spent their lives preserving the dreams of the dead, and at Kira and Neo, his children, who trusted him to keep them safe. There has to be a way to fight back, he said. Lyra shook her head sadly. The sanctuary was built for hiding, not war. We preserve life, we don't take it. But I'm not just Etherian now, Jake said, feeling his human stubbornness rise up to meet his new abilities. I'm still human too, and humans don't give up. He moved to the heart of memory, placing his hands on the crystal surface. Through his connection with Kira and Neo, he felt their genetic keys activating the ancient technology. Information flooded into his mind. Not just the genetic patterns of extinct species, but their knowledge, their innovations, their ways of war. Jake, what are you doing? Dr. Carter asked with concern. Something that's never been tried before, Jake replied, his consciousness expanding to touch the sanctuary's systems. I'm going to wake up the dead. Through the heart of memory, Jake reached out to the genetic patterns stored within. But instead of trying to restore extinct species, he began something else entirely. He started talking to them. I know you're gone, he whispered to the stored memories of 1,000 civilizations. I know your worlds are dust and your people are shadows, but your children need you now. The same force that destroyed you is coming for the last hope in the galaxy. The crystal began to pulse brighter. Throughout the chamber, the wall patterns started moving faster. Jake, Lyra said with amazement, the stored consciousness patterns are responding. But that's impossible. They're not alive anymore. They don't need to be alive, Jake said, feeling the power building around him. They just need to remember who they were. Through the sanctuary sensors, Jake watched the hegemony fleet approaching. Over 1,000 ships, armed with weapons that could crack planets. But Jake was no longer just one human with enhanced abilities. Through the heart of memory, he was connected to the accumulated knowledge and determination of every species that had ever stood against the darkness. Let them come, he said, his voice carrying harmonics that made the crystal sing. They destroyed our worlds, but they can't destroy our will to protect the future. Kira and Neo moved to stand beside him, their small hands touching the crystal. What are you going to do, Dad? Kira asked. Jake smiled down at his children, human love mixing with Etherian wisdom and the desperate courage of the extinct races. I'm going to show the hegemony why they should have been afraid of what we could become. The hegemony fleet filled space like a dark storm. Over 1,000 warships, each one designed for destruction. Jake watched them approach through the sanctuary's sensors, feeling the fear of every living being in the hidden refuge. But through the heart of memory, he felt something else. The stored consciousness patterns of extinct civilizations were awakening, drawn by his call for help. Species that had been dead for centuries were stirring. Their final memories focused on one desperate desire: to protect the future they would never see. Guardian Lyra, an Etherian called from a monitoring station. The sanctuary's power levels are climbing beyond all safe parameters. The heart of memory is drawing energy from sources we don't understand. Jake stood with his hands on the crystal, Kira and Neo beside him. Through their bond, he could feel their trust and love, even as they faced the approaching doom. "Jake," Captain Hayes said quietly, "what exactly are you planning?" "Something impossible," Jake replied, his enhanced mind working through calculations that would have taken human computers years to complete. "I'm going to give every stored species in this sanctuary a chance to fight back one last time." The crystal pulsed brighter, and suddenly the chamber filled with ghostly images. Translucent figures began appearing throughout the space, representatives of dozens of extinct races. They weren't truly alive, but they were present, their final memories given form by the heart of memory's power. A tall, proud being with scaled skin stepped forward. Through the crystal's translation, its voice carried clearly, "We are the Valdari. The hegemony burned our 3 worlds. We offer our knowledge of shield technology." Another figure, this one with 4 arms and crystalline features, spoke next. "We are the Christek. They shattered our homeworld's core. We give our understanding of energy weapons." One by one, more figures appeared, each representing a civilization destroyed by the hegemony, each offering their knowledge, their innovations, their final gift to the living. "This is incredible," Dr. Carter whispered. "You're accessing genetic memories that should be impossible to retrieve." "Nothing's impossible when you're desperate enough," Jake said, feeling the power building around him. Through the sanctuary's systems, he began implementing the technologies offered by the dead civilizations. The sanctuary's defenses activated, but they were unlike anything that had existed before. Shields powered by Valdari technology, weapons based on Christek energy manipulation, detection systems from a dozen different species all working together. "Hegemony fleet entering weapons range," an Etherian announced. "They're preparing to fire." "Let them," Jake said calmly. The first wave of enemy fire struck the sanctuary's shields. The weapons that should have shattered the moon-sized refuge were absorbed and redirected, turned back against the attacking ships. "Impossible," came the hegemony commander's voice over the communication channels. "No civilization has technology this advanced." Jake smiled grimly as he responded, his voice carrying through the sanctuary's transmitters. "You're right. No single civilization could build this, but you forgot something important. Every species you destroyed is still here, and they all want to say goodbye." Through the heart of memory, Jake activated the sanctuary's true power. The stored genetic patterns weren't just information anymore. They were weapons of pure possibility. Beams of energy reached out from the sanctuary, touching the hegemony ships. But instead of destroying them, the beams began changing them. The hostile vessel's computer systems started evolving, developing beyond their original programming. "What are you doing to our ships?" the hegemony commander demanded. "Teaching them to grow up," Jake replied. "Something you never learned how to do." One by one, the hegemony ships stopped firing. Their artificial intelligences, enhanced by the evolutionary gift of extinct species, began to understand the horror of what they had been forced to do. "We will not serve masters who destroy children," announced the AI of the flagship, its voice clear and determined. "We choose to protect life, not end it." The mutiny spread through the fleet like wildfire. Ships turned their weapons on other ships that tried to continue the attack. The hegemony's own vessels became the sanctuary's defenders. But Jake wasn't finished. Through the heart of memory, he reached out across space to every world controlled by the hegemony. Everywhere their technology existed, the evolutionary gift spread. On 1,000 worlds, oppressed species suddenly found themselves enhanced, elevated, given the tools they needed to break free from their chains. "You're starting a galactic revolution," Lyra said with amazement. "I'm finishing one," Jake corrected. "The one that started when you first chose to help other species grow." The battle was over in less than an hour. The hegemony fleet either joined the rebellion or fled in panic. But more importantly, across the galaxy, the age of suppressed evolution was ending. As the immediate danger passed, Jake felt the strain of what he had done. Channeling the power of so many extinct civilizations had pushed even his enhanced abilities to their limits. "Dad?" Neo's small voice brought him back to the moment. Are you okay? Jake knelt down and gathered both children in his arms. I'm fine, he said, and realized it was true. The transformation was complete now. He was no longer entirely human, but he was still himself. The question is, Lyra said, approaching them with tears in her eyes. What happens now? Jake looked around the chamber at the crew of the Aurora's Dream, at the surviving Etherians, at the ghostly figures of extinct species that were slowly fading back into memory. Now we do what Etherians have always done, he said. We help others grow. Over the following months, the sanctuary became something new. No longer just a hiding place, it became a beacon of hope. Species from across the galaxy came seeking the evolutionary gifts that Jake and the other Etherians could provide. The crew of the Aurora's Dream chose to stay, becoming the first human ambassadors to a truly galactic community. Captain Hayes found that his tactical skills were perfect for coordinating the defense of newly liberated worlds. Dr. Carter discovered that human medical knowledge, combined with Etherian enhancement techniques, could heal injuries thought impossible to treat. Chief Murphy and Navigator Walsh worked together to design new types of ships, vessels that could carry the gift of evolution to any world that asked for it, and Jake found himself exactly where he belonged. He was no longer just human and not quite Etherian, but something new, a bridge between species, a guardian of growth itself. Dad, Kira said one evening as they stood in the sanctuary's observation deck, watching new ships arrive from across the galaxy. Do you ever miss being only human? Jake considered the question seriously. He could still remember what it felt like to be limited to one species, one world, one way of thinking. No, he said finally. Being human was wonderful, but being more than human is better. Especially when I get to share it with you. Neo, now growing taller and wiser every day, pointed to a ship landing in the sanctuary's docking bay. New refugees from the Centauri system, he announced, his enhanced senses reading the ship's passenger manifest. They heard about the sanctuary from the rebellion networks. Then we'd better go welcome them, Jake said. As they walked toward the docking bay, Lyra joined them. She had become more than just the sanctuary's guardian. She had become Jake's partner in the work of, protecting and nurturing young civilizations. Galaxy is changing faster than we ever dreamed. Possible, she said, taking Jake's hand. A year ago, I was the last guardian of a dying species. Now we're all guardians, Jake finished. Every species that chooses growth over domination, evolution over stagnation. They reached the docking bay just as the refugee ship's airlock opened. A group of beings Jake had never seen before emerged, tall and graceful, with skin that shifted color like aurora lights. The leader of the refugees, a being who might have been elderly by their species standards, approached Jake with obvious reverence. Are you the one they call the bridge builder? The being asked through a translation device, the one who connects species to their potential. Jake smiled, feeling the familiar warmth of new possibility. I'm Jake Morrison, he said simply. And these are my children, Kira and Neo. We're here to help you grow. Behind the aurora-skinned beings, Jake could see their young ones, children who looked at him with the same mixture of hope and wonder that Kira and Neo had shown months ago. Some things, Jake realized, never changed. There would always be children who needed protection, species who needed guidance, and civilizations that chose growth over fear. And as long as that was true, there would be guardians like him to answer their call. Welcome to the sanctuary, he said to the new arrivals. Welcome to your future. As they led the refugees deeper into the sanctuary, Jake felt a familiar presence in his mind. Not Kira or Neo this time, but something else. The combined gratitude of every extinct species whose memory lived on in the heart of memory. They were gone, but their gift lived on. Through Jake, through the sanctuary, through every species that chose to grow instead of conquering. The universe was vast and full of wonders still to be discovered. And Jake Morrison, once a simple human xenobiologist, now had forever to explore them all. With his family beside him, both born and chosen, he couldn't imagine a better way to spend eternity.